In a moment of weakness, Sandra made a decision that would change her life forever. Feeling neglected by Nnamdi, she sought comfort in the arms of her superior at work. What began as innocent conversations soon developed into a full-blown affair. Her supervisor, an experienced womanizer who had been married twice, saw Sandra as just another conquest. But for Sandra, the affair was a thrilling escape from her otherwise dull and emotionally starved life. She was careful to keep everything hidden, convinced that no one, especially Nnamdi, would ever discover the truth. Amarachi and Sandra had been best friends since childhood, growing up in the same neighborhood in Enugu, Nigeria. Their bond was so strong that many mistook them for twins. They were tall, slim, and always had similar hairstyles. Their shared taste in fashion meant that they were often seen wearing identical outfits, and their families were as close-knit as they were, attending the same church and participating in family events together. As the years passed, Amarachi and Sandra grew even closer. They confided in each other about their dreams, their fears, and their personal lives. Even after they are both married, they maintained the same deep connection. Amarachi married Chike, a responsible, calm, and thoughtful man who adored her and their children. Sandra married Nnamdi, her high school sweetheart, and they appeared to be the perfect couple. Nnamdi, known for his kindness and loyalty, was always doting on Sandra, making them the envy of many. On the surface, everything seemed perfect for both women. They had wonderful husbands, good jobs, and their friendship remained unbreakable. But beneath Sandra's glowing smile and happy face lay a secret that would soon shake their world. Amarachi's marriage to Chike was steady and grounded. Chike was a man who believed in putting his family first. He was attentive and caring, always ensuring that his wife and children had everything they needed. For Amarachi, life seemed perfect, with a loving husband and a peaceful home. Sandra's marriage to Nnamdi, though equally admired from the outside, was much more complicated. Nnamdi had always been a hard worker, spending long hours at his job to provide for his family. He was the definition of a reliable man, loyal, committed, and never one to falter in his duties. But Sandra felt neglected. Nnamdi's long working hours left her feeling lonely and unappreciated, though she pretended to everyone, including Amarachi, that everything was fine. For years, Sandra had nagged Nnamdi about wanting a child, but Nnamdi's inability to give her only deepened the tension in their marriage. Sandra became resentful, secretly blaming him for her unhappiness. Nnamdi, unaware of how deeply his wife felt, was sad about his own shortcomings, but kept his emotions bottled up. In a moment of weakness, Sandra made a decision that would change her life forever. Feeling neglected by Nnamdi, she sought comfort in the arms of her superior at work. What began as innocent conversations soon developed into a full-blown affair. Her supervisor, an experienced womanizer who had been married twice, saw Sandra as just another conquest. But for Sandra, the affair was a thrilling escape from her otherwise dull and emotionally starved life. The affair went on for months. Sandra felt alive again, basking in the attention and passion that she believed Nnamdi no longer provided. She was careful to keep everything hidden, convinced that no one, especially Nnamdi, would ever discover the truth. What she did not expect, however, was to get pregnant. After years of unsuccessfully trying to conceive with Nnamdi, Sandra was shocked when she discovered that she was expecting. The pregnancy should have been a cause for celebration, but Sandra knew the truth. The baby belonged to her supervisor, not Nnamdi. Despite her guilt, she chose to lie, telling Nnamdi that the child was his. Overjoyed, Nnamdi praised God for finally blessing him with the child he had prayed for, completely unaware of the deception. A year later, one sunny afternoon, Sandra visited Amarachi's home, brimming with excitement and carrying a secret that she could no longer keep to herself. Over tea, she confessed everything to Amarachi: the affair, their child with her superior. Amarachi was horrified. She had always respected Sandra, but this revelation shook her to the core. Sandra seemed more excited than remorseful, as if the affair had filled a void in her life that she did not know how to fix. Amarachi's heart broke as she listened to her friend justify her actions. She could see the disaster looming ahead, but could not force Sandra to see it. Amarachi tried to reason with Sandra, urging her to come clean to Nnamdi and end the affair before things spiraled further out of control. But Sandra refused. She was too deep in her lie and too afraid of the consequences. Amarachi left the conversation shaking, unsure of how to handle the burden of her friend's betrayal. Though Sandra thought she had everything under control, the truth was bound to come out. One evening, while Sandra was out, Nnamdi stumbled upon an email that changed everything. The email, sent from Sandra's supervisor, detailed the affair in no uncertain terms. Nnamdi, shocked and heartbroken, sat frozen as the reality of his wife's betrayal sank in. When Sandra returned home, Nnamdi confronted her with the evidence. Her lies unraveled before her eyes, and she could no longer hide the truth. In that painful moment, Sandra confessed about the affair, their child, and the lies she had told. Nnamdi's world shattered. The child he had been overjoyed about wasn't his, and the woman he had trusted with his heart had deceived him. The emotional toll was devastating, and Nnamdi could barely process the betrayal. The realization that his greatest blessing had been built on a lie was more than he could bear. As Sandra's world collapsed, her supervisor, the man she had risked everything for, distanced himself. He had never been serious about the relationship, and he was not ready to father a child. Quietly, he packed his belongings and left Nigeria, using the small savings he had to start a new life abroad. He had no interest in Sandra or the child, and simply disappeared from her life without a second thought. Sandra was left to face the consequences of the affair alone. Nnamdi filed for divorce, and it wasn't long before child service intervened. They deemed neither Sandra nor her supervisor lover fit to care for the child. Sandra's child, named David, was placed in the state custody, and Sandra was only allowed to visit twice a week. Her worst nightmare had come true. She had lost everything. Word of Sandra's affair spread quickly within their social cycle, and her reputation was ruined. The once envied woman who had seemed to have it all was now the subject of gossip and scorn. Her family too was devastated by the news. They had always viewed Nnamdi as the perfect son-in-law, and Sandra's betrayal left them heartbroken. Amarachi, though deeply disappointed in her friend, could not entirely abandon Sandra. She still visited her occasionally, offering support as Sandra dealt with the fallout of her choices. But their friendship was never the same. Amarachi could not forget the pain Sandra had caused Nnamdi and the people who loved her. Sandra, now living alone, was overwhelmed by the enormity of her mistakes. She had betrayed her husband, lost her child, and ruined her reputation. all for a fleeting moment of passion. The consequences of her actions weighed heavily on her, and she spent her days reflecting on the choices that had led her to this point. While Sandra's life unraveled, Nnamdi focused on healing. The betrayal had caught him deeply, and his health, already fragile, took a turn for the worse. But with the support of his family and friends, including Amarachi and her husband, Nnamdi began the long process of recovery. He threw himself into his work, trying to rebuild the life that had been torn apart by Sandra's deceit. Though he had been deeply wounded, Nnamdi eventually found peace. He knew that forgiving Sandra was the only way he could move forward, though he could never forget the pain she had caused him. Slowly, he began to rebuild his life, determined not to let the betrayal define his future. Sandra's life became a cautionary tale for those around her. The excitement she had sought through her affair had led to her downfall, and the consequences of her betrayal extended far beyond her own suffering. She had hurt the people who loved her, destroyed her marriage, and lost her child. Lessons are clear. Deceit and betrayal never lead to happiness, and the tree of escaping one's problems is always fleeting. Amarachi, reflecting on everything that had happened, was reminded of the importance of honesty and loyalty. She had watched her friend's life spiral out of control, and though she had tried to prevent it, Sandra's choices had ultimately led her to her own ruin. Amarachi had learned to value her marriage and her relationships even more, cherishing the trust and love that she shared with Chike.